All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. We're recording on Friday, November 8th at 9:33 p.m., about 15 minutes after UNC's loss to Kansas, 92-89, a thrilling finish. It felt like a NCAA tournament game. I want to welcome on producer Connor, Mike Hardison of Football Reaction fame, and a first-time big hitter, former UNC walk-on Spenser Dalton, played for the Tar Heels in the 14-15 season and 15-16 season. We're going to have Spenser on for a bunch of these post-game shows. All right, guys, let's get a quick initial thoughts. I mean, my take, tale of two halves. Like, I thought completely outmatched by a much better team in the first half. Kind of shell-shocked, weird lineups, couldn't handle the big men. And then you kind of like, all right, UNC's going to lose this game. Let's see if they can keep it close. And then second half, all of a sudden, there's this big run. Started hitting shots, chipping away. It's like, all right, it's 8 points, 9 points, 5 points, 3 points. And then they had a lead. And then it kind of was just like, all right, who's going to make a shot at the end? Let's start with you, Spenser. Your initial takeaways. Let's keep it short, keep it light. We'll bounce around here as we get into some more particulars.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm proud of is the way that we played in the second half. I mean, a lot of teams on the road in an environment like that are going to lay down and just, maybe they get it to single digits or something like that, but they just never quite get it any closer. So I'm proud of the way that the guys responded in the second half. I wrote a note down here, demoralizing first half. I mean, they were just beating us in so many different ways. And so, again, proud of the way we responded. I got some thoughts on what the reasons were for, the getting that big deficit in the first half and then how we were able to make it up in the second half. But, good response in the second half, although we did just come up just short.
And what a crazy, if UNC had won, God, it's like you're playing with house money there
Oh, my
at the
goodness.
end.
Yeah.
Like, what an amazing win. I think there's a moral victory component here as well. And just the confidence of like, all right, you can go into anywhere now. I mean, playing at Duke, playing anywhere, hostile environment. Mm-hmm. You went head-to-head with Kansas. Mike, your kind of initial takeaways, tale of two halves again, but like, give us a take on the first half and what you think went wrong, and then your feelings coming out of the game.
Yeah, first half I think was just me kind of freaking out about not having a true center. I was extremely worried about moving forward. I was thinking about how that Duke game at Cameron was going to go without having a real center, considering who they've got in their front court. I was getting some texts from friends saying this doesn't look good. But I think it speaks to the program and the culture that they were able to kind of rebound like they did. There are some issues, right? And like, I think we'll touch on them. I am worried about, the front court. I think they got it together in the second half, and that was really great to see. RJ hasn't been shooting particularly well over the last couple games. I hope that is a momentary blip. One thing I thought late in the second half, I don't know what everyone else thought, but it almost got to the point for me where I was like, I kind of want the ball in Seth's hands as we close out the game, which is something wild to say. If I told myself that like middle of last season, I kind of looked at myself like I was crazy. So definite progression on his part. In general, I think I'm excited to see this. Like, if this had happened later in the season, I think I'd be worried. But like the resiliency that they showed 2 games into the season at Fog, arguably the toughest place to play in America, that speaks a lot to the team's culture. So I'm cautiously optimistic here. I'm pretty excited.
Not just at Fog, against, I think, a really good Kansas team. They're loaded. Yeah. They did some work in the transfer portal. They have a fifth-year big man in Hunter Dickinson. Connor, what was your biggest concern in the first half?
Concern in the first half was obviously size, and we saw a lot of Vanau and Lubin, and I said last episode I wasn't sure how much we would see him in this game, but he pleasantly surprised me. And then you look at the backcourt, RJ, Elliott Cadeau, and Seth Trimble were combined 10 for 36, 2 for 13 from 3. And then for RJ to play that bad and to come within one shot of upsetting the number 1 ranked team in the country, I think it's a huge stepping stone. And we've seen so many Carolina teams in years past down 20 roll over, and that's the game. And that's all she wrote right there. Mm-hmm. And then the number 1 bright spot I wanted to hit on, especially in the second half, Jalen Withers, a near double-double, had a little bit of foul trouble in the first half, but this is a dude that had 4 threes all of last season, 3 for 5 tonight. Consistent, energy was there. That's the number 1 bright spot I want to take away from this near victory.
Yeah, 11 points for Withers, 9 rebounds. Last game he had 10 points, 10 rebounds. Yeah, I mean, you like his effort. And if he had made one more three at UNC, it's a good chance UNC wins this game. Withers and Washington both had corner threes. They're pretty good looks. And I don't even know if you want Withers or Washington as that option, but there's a reason why they're open there at the end. And those last two possessions, or I guess the second and third last possessions for UNC that they missed. Spenser, first half. Let's go a little first half here. Why was UNC getting so cooked on defense? Like you played, you know the game better than us. Like what do they need to work on? What was the issue that maybe they fixed in the second half that stood out to you?
So ball screen defense was a big one, as well as transition defense. But like I'll talk about ball screen defense first. So ball screen defense, or lack thereof, has been something that's plagued Carolina basketball going back to when I was on the team, but certainly in the Hubert Davis era, ball screen defense has just kind of been really neither here nor there. So there's a few different ways to defend a ball screen, and they're all quite different. There's hedging, which is the classic hedge is UVA. Like the big guy goes way out. He forces that guard to change direction, pushes them away from the 3-point line, and then he's able to create a lane that the guard can recover after being screened and then get back to his man. Carolina has not done that. Occasionally we'll sprinkle in a hedge, but we have not done that under Hubert Davis. What we did tonight was a kind of a weird version of what we called it, backing the screen. There's a couple different terms for it, but essentially the ball defender like just does his best job to get around a screen, and the big guy kind of sags off. And, you know, for teams that are really good drivers, which, you know, it seems like Kansas definitely is, they've got great big guys too, but the good drivers, it does kind of help to keep the guard from getting into the lane. But what it also does is leave a rolling big man like really open, and they killed us on little dishes off the ball screen. I mean, and even not so much the first dish off the ball screen, but there were a lot of little like big to big little touch passes and stuff like that, little quick ones that happen. So, you know, you see a dish and then guy has to help over, and then they get a wide open layup or a dunk. And then transition defense was not great in the first, say, like 12 to 16 minutes. Really in that middle stretch, we're just getting lost. Like Kansas has one guy who leaks out maybe a little bit. We maybe don't have the best defensive balance with a point guard, like making his way back towards half court once the shot goes up. And, you know, we got 3 or 4 guys running back, and it's like 2 on 4, and we still somehow get beat. You know, they had one alley-oop dunk in the first half that was, you know, guy threw like a, 40-foot alley-oop almost. And I'm like, what is going on here? How is this happening? We're just getting lost in transition and not finding our guys.
You know, Spenser, adequate question is pretty relevant here. You played on those teams with Bryce Johnson, Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Hicks. Clearly there was always 2 very skilled big men on the court at all times.
Yes.
How did teams kind of try to combat that if you were playing against a smaller team or a clearly outmatched team in the post? Maybe what was most effective against some of those guys you played with? And can Carolina this year, you know, pull any of that into their game plan moving forward?
I mean, you've got to attack the ball screen really hard. Again, from an offense perspective, Carolina's on defense. You've got to attack the ball screen really, really hard and try to get downhill. You kind of skirt around that big man and get downhill into the lane, because once a ball handler's in the lane, there's a guy rolling, there's shooters waiting on the perimeter, anything can happen. You know, there's 3 options. He can pass to a perimeter guy, he can make a move himself, or he can dish the big guy rolling. So attacking that big man, getting downhill, and just trying to get into the lane. And again, we just didn't do a great job of that tonight. Like, there were so many times where we've got 2, like the guard is just like running down the lane from behind the ball handler. and that ball handler is able to just work his way in and shoot a little floater. I mean, Harris 3, 4, 5 times just had like wide open floaters from like 8, 10, 12 feet with just nobody guarding him because we just didn't do a good enough job like communicating and recovering.
Were there changes made at halftime that you could clearly tell on the defensive side that Hubert and the staff did that stood out?
I think they didn't really end up playing the screen any differently. Maybe that big pushed up just a little bit rather than sagging off quite so far, just so that ball handler didn't have the chance to get so downhill and to, kind of just force them to make a decision so our guard can recover a little bit better. I don't think from a strategy perspective, they changed much. I think it was more just executing the way it's supposed to be, Yeah.
Mike, you mentioned big men in the first half. And I mean, this is going to be a concern and something we talk about all the time. Like they don't have a star big man. I just don't think there's a guy on the roster. And it's going to be, I think we talked about it a couple times in different preview podcasts. I was going to be like a patchwork of 3 or 4 guys. What guy did you like tonight? What lineup combination do you like? Because they tried a bunch of different things. And there were times when it was Withers at the 5 and Drake at the 4. Anything on the big men that kind of stood out to you and what you think is going to work moving forward?
Yeah, so in the summer, I had a lot of UNC group texts saying around the Moneyball meme where talking about we need to recreate Armando in the aggregate. I'm going to give you a stat line here, and you tell me if it sounds like an Armando game. 17 points, 12 rebounds. Because that sounds like a pretty classic Armando Bacot game. That is the combination of Van Allen Lubin and Jalen Washington tonight.
Yeah.
The combination of their points and rebounds. So that tells me that's probably the plan moving forward. I don't think we're going to have a true 5 kind of step up into that like role where it's going to be obvious that they need to be starting there constantly. I think Hubert's probably going to run through Jalen Withers, Jalen Washington, Van Allen Lubin to try and figure out what works the best. What stood out to me, I liked a lot of Van Allen Lubin's minutes. I think probably some of the issues he had is probably a chemistry standpoint coming into a team that has some experience with each other as someone that's transferred twice already, now the 3rd time here. So I'd like to see where he's at kind of come December, January time frame because he might step up into that role. One other potential lineup possibility that I think would be pretty interesting, seeing what we saw tonight, would be Van Allen Lubin at the 4 and Jalen Withers at the 5. That is obviously a little undersized, so we won't be able to roll that out against some of the larger teams we play. But that's going to add a lot of flexibility to our team, especially if Withers can consistently hit even 30% from 3. So kind of curious to see how that goes moving forward. I think Jalen Washington, like I'm still hoping there's another step forward as the season progresses. There's a couple of moments like on putback dunks tonight where I was like, okay, you can see the flashes, you can see what the team sees, but it's just all about consistency for him. So obviously first half I was like, oh my god, like we are screwed, and then second half it seemed like they kind of calmed down a little bit and a little bit more hopeful for the 3 of them kind of recreating Armando in the aggregate moving forward.
Another issue with Lubin, I mean, he's 6'8", and it showed when sometimes going against bigger guys. Like he just got outsized, and then Washington on the other end, he's not very strong compared to Bacot. I mean, there's times when Dickinson would just kind of man him down. So, but they both combined for 9 fouls, which is kind of another element to that aggregate.
Real quick, just to play devil's advocate here. You end up against Hunter Dickinson, who's a 5th-year starting center, who's like an All-American type level player, and Badunga, I think Flory Badunga is like a top level recruit at the 5. So like in terms of front courts moving forward, like that's one of the best we're going to see all season, and they still played well. We out rebounded them. We out rebounded them 40-39.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, Mike. Yeah, that the rebounding was a little glimmer of hope. I mean, first half not as good, second half much better. Lubin got a bunch of really good rebounds. Withers always seems to like kind of come up with some crazy ones. I mean, considering the personnel that we were going up against, we gave up some buckets that we would like to have back from Dickinson, especially late. I mean, he had 2 game-winning plays, but we did a pretty good job. And, I think Withers had a decent minute or two of defense. I mean, one thing that you can do with a guy who's really big is put a smaller, slightly more athletic guy on them and try to front and just like play the position game rather than just bruising with them. And, Lubin only being at 6'8", he can't bruise with the guy who's 7'2", maybe who's 6'10", 6'11", sure, but not giving up 5-6 inches,
Yeah. It's just crazy. Like, this is a lot different type of podcast than I expected we are going to be recording. There's like a lot more positives because of that result. Yeah, no, of course. Like, shout out to our graphics guy Garrett. I was getting him photos. I get him at halftime because Getty and USA Today have photos at halftime, so you kind of get those out. So we always did Inside Carolina too. You kind of get the photos ready, and it's all sad photos. And like, now I got to switch up because the graphics gonna be a little different. It's not like a losing graphic, I think. Okay, one thing. Let's just go through. This is gonna be a fun game. I want everyone to tell me their favorite lineup. Like, what stood out? What would you like to see moving forward? One thing I noticed, and I not necessarily like this is my favorite lineup, but I always noticed that Ian Jackson, Drake Powell play together. They come in together. Seems like they play the most minutes together. I don't know why. I don't know if that's some sort of strategy. If just these guys are roommates and just playing together, but that's something I've noticed the last two games. All right, Connor, what is your ideal lineup after watching two games of the Tar Heels now?
Well, it does seem like Hubert's kind of figured out that 8-man rotation. So we kind of have the players to choose from. RJ Davis obviously has to be on the court. I think Elliot Cadeau at the point guard has to be in this lineup as well. He's one of the most, I'm more comfortable with the ball in his hands than I can say for a lot of guards in the UNC in the last 10 years. Kendall Marshall comes to mind, Marcus Page. I just trust Elliot Cadeau with the ball. So definitely him, definitely RJ Davis. I'll say Seth Trimble. I like that 3-guard lineup. It gives a lot of athleticism. You can switch on some of those small guard ball screens they run. Withers at the 4, until proven otherwise. He's been hitting threes this year, rebounding at a high rate. I love his energy. And then I think you do have to stick starting Jalen Washington, but I feel like that closing group is going to be more and more towards a Vin Allen Lubin at the 5 or a Drake Powell / Withers front court as well. So I like the four starters he had at 1 through 4, and then that 5 spot's kind of a toss-up for me between Vin Allen Lubin and then maybe a Drake Powell if you can get away with playing Withers at the 5.
Spencer, any thoughts? Differences, changes?
I wouldn't say any differences. Ian Jackson played some really good minutes tonight.
It's hard to keep him off the court.
Especially in the first half. Hard to keep him off the court. I think that's the thing that's tough about it is he plays that 3 position. So it's like, are you going to sit Seth Trimble? Are you going to sit Elliot Cadeau? Are you going to sit RJ Davis so that, Jackson can get a few minutes? And because he's not big enough to play the 4. So that's just that continuous puzzle that Hubert's going to have to put together over the season.
No Cade Tyson in your lineup?
Well,
we'll get to him.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I would love to see him in there somewhere where Withers can play the 4 or kind of play the 3, stretch 3, something like that. And then Tyson can play the 4, knock down some shots, make some things happen. And then, any of the other guys, Washington ideally, I think, just because he is the biggest guy we have. I'd love to see some Cade Tyson, but he had maybe 2 quick minutes today and didn't see the court otherwise.
Not even.
I don't think he got to 2 minutes. Mike, your thoughts on what lineup you like and particular players that stood out to you so far?
Yeah, so kind of echo Connor and Spencer here. I think the starting lineup is the best starting lineup we have right now. But as the game progresses, you'll get a feel for who's got the hot hand tonight because we do have a lot of backcourt kind of talent. So I think you roll with the two of 3 of RJ, Seth, and Elliot Cadeau. Whoever's playing well that night, some of them are going to have off nights. Like RJ had an off night tonight. I think as the season progresses, Drake Powell is going to take that end of game starting 3 position. I think you cannot keep him off the court from a defensive perspective.
You can switch everything with him.
Yeah, and having him and Seth Trimble defensively in closing down situations would be very tough for opposing teams. And then I'd probably pick whoever's playing better between Withers and Val Lubin. I think those 2 guys have kind of a better feel for the end of games, with the exception of Withers taking 3s from the corner with 2 minutes left, which has been throughout the last 3 games has killed my spirit. I am they need to figure out the end of game lineup soon and kind of work
Yep.
with them because late game execution has been a dagger for Carolina over the last couple of seasons, but maybe it's a Hubert thing, where in close games they kind of rely on the other team making mistakes as opposed to them going out and executing their game plan. Um, and unfortunately, it's been Kansas, Alabama, some of these elite level programs that we've seen that against, but they need to find a lineup that's going to allow them to enforce their will.
And the positive, real quick, is that Carolina might not see a more talented front court than what they saw tonight. So against some of these ACC teams they see, we're not going to have a fifth-year All-American center and Hunter Dickinson going against, so they can probably get away with some of those smaller lineups with the Drake Powell, Jalen Withers, whoever playing the five like that. So I think we're going to see a lot more combinations against maybe more undersized teams they'll see in conference play.
I think it's important to know RJ Davis went 3 for 15 from the field and 1 for 7 from 3. We mentioned that, but there's not many games where he doesn't make, at least 2 or 3 threes and shoot a little bit better from the field. If he hits one more shot, UNC wins. If Withers or Washington hits one of those threes, they win. If my aunt had a blank, they'd be my uncle type of thing. So we can't deal with that. All right, let's do the Cade Tyson portion of the podcast. We did this last episode with just me and Connor. I think the sample size, we've reached that moment where I'm not sure Cade Tyson, this is going to be the year for him. I mean, he played 1 minute, he airballed a baseline 15-footer, and then got cooked on a screen, I think for a 3, and then he was pulled out of the game, and he did not come back in. This comes after, I think, only 2 points against Elon and a pretty bad performance in the Memphis game. Those are the 3 times I've seen UNC play. This guy was the number, I think it was 35. I was looking at it. It's top 40 ranked transfer. There's thousands of transfers. He was number 35 in the nation. Highly recruited by tons of teams. Came down to UNC and Tennessee. I think most teams would have taken him out of the transfer portal. That's the kind of recruit he was. He shot 46% from the 3 as like a 6'7", entering his 3rd year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Hubert's lost hope in him now. I don't know if he's not starting, first of all, and he's not playing a lot. I don't know what's going to have to happen for him to play. Spenser, go to you. I mean, you played the game at the college level. What do you think is going on right now with Cade Tyson's role in this team? And we'll get out of here on this with some final thoughts after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the sample size we have from him at Belmont is pretty good. He's a great shooter. We know he has the skills just standing in the gym, We know he can bury it. I went to practice. It actually happened to be the first day of practice back in September, and he made some good plays in practice. He looked pretty good. I can't remember if he was with the starters most or all the time exactly, but he played well in practice. And again, from his recruiting profile, I was excited, and felt, everybody's hand to the heavens. We've got a 4-man who can shoot the 3. That's so many great teams have big guys that can shoot 3s, and it just something doesn't seem to be clicking out there, man. I mean, I don't know if it's maybe the step up in athleticism, maybe it's the step up in the gravity. We're on ESPN now. We're playing it in the fog. Could be a little bit of everything. And I think one of the things that's really difficult when guys are new and when guys are making changes as well is that sometimes you just don't get a lot of chances to make something good happen. In a perfect world, you get your 6, 8, 10 minutes in a game or in a half to make something good happen and to get into a flow, to work up a sweat, and just feel like you're connected and involved in the game. And at the highest levels of college basketball, you kind of got to be a microwave. You just got to step on the court and be able to make it happen, And so far that hadn't seemed to be the case with him.
And they could use a shooter of his size. I mean, every team could.
Absolutely.
So, he would be the guy taking that corner 3 other than Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers. He would, and his being able to spread the court just opens up more driving lanes for Cadeau and RJ and Trimble. Mike, Connor, anything in particular about Cade that you want to say? And we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, two things. I feel like anytime we have a recruit or a transfer that's known for being a sharpshooter, they pay like the Carolina tax, where 5% like of their shooting percentage comes right off the top. Like,
Yep, there you
yeah,
go.
they transfer in. I don't know what it is about the Deem Dome. They just lose some ability. I will say this in his defense, right? To step up to the Power Four in terms of speed of the game. Your first two games, it's your first game in the Dean Dome with the Carolina crowd, probably not used to that level of intensity, right? A lot of pressure on the kid. Second, then you go to Fogg, like
Yeah.
the mecca
Yeah.
of college basketball.
Tough.
So like tough, especially as you're adjusting to this new level of the game. So yes, it's concerning because I think more so than anything we've seen from him, it's Hubert immediately going to the freshman, or I mean James Brown played more minutes than him tonight, right? Like our lowest ranked freshman recruit. So like that's kind of concerning in the back of my head. I'm willing to give the kid the benefit of the doubt that these have been two big games for different reasons and see where he's at against maybe some of the lower level competition come November, come December. Might be a good opportunity to kind of get him up to speed, make him more comfortable with the team.
It's a great point by Spencer. Like I think Hubert needs to let him. Maybe Kansas wasn't the game for this, but like, yeah, get him out there and like let him make some mistakes. Give him 10, 15 minutes where he can just like, we're not gonna pull you. You have to work through some of these things. They have American University next Friday, so a week off. Then at Hawaii and then the Maui Invitational. And really, I mean, there's not many gimmies left. I mean, they'll play Dayton, LaSalle, Campbell, and then it's ACC play. It's kind of damn. There's a lot of like. There's not many gimmies this year. But yeah, I mean, what do you think is going through his mind? I mean, comes out with the mouthpiece too. I don't like the guy wearing the mouthpiece, like zero facial hair. He looks so kind of baby faced out there.
I mean, hey,
dude, the mouthpiece. What did you say?
The kid's feeling bad enough.
I know the mouthpiece was like a basketball ick for me. I don't know. But like, dude, the pressure of UNC, man. I mean, Spencer probably felt it as a walk on. Like, Twitter is brutal, and like, don't you dare hop on the message boards.
Ross, you've been feeling that lately too.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Twitter's tough for me, man. I don't even play the game. Luckily, I'm very mentally strong. All right, let's get out of here. I got a buddy in the back, John. Shout out, lift your hand. Yeah, I got John who watched the game with us. John Owner, shout out. But one thing I want to add is I think Elliot Hiddo is like, dude, he's getting that sophomore bump. He looks stronger. I know Jay Billis said that on the broadcast, but Connor touched on it. Like, I feel good with the ball. I feel good with him shooting the ball. I feel so much better about Trimble and Cadeau shooting the ball and being like offensive threats. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Like, that backcourt is exciting. And Ian Jackson, great minutes from him. If he kind of just calms down a little bit. And then I think Drake Powell, he's going to need some time to get offensively. But you're seeing the flash of athleticism and you're seeing kind of what he can do. He just kind of needs I think some more experience too. All right. Any last words? You might got something you want to say? We good?
Real quick, round robin. Yeah, Spencer.
Right,
I was going to say just one final finisher. If we see the Carolina team from the first half throughout the season, it's going to be a tough one. If we see the team from the second half, yes, we lost, but we could throw away that first half for now. If we see the team from the second half, we will definitely be having some fun this year.
I just want to say I'm a fan of these early season tests. Carolina taking on Kansas tonight, and then Duke having a big one against Army. I think that's going to be really big for them moving forward this season. So I know we learned a lot tonight. Happy to hop on with you guys.
I'm going to second that from Connor. Like, you have to love college basketball, right? Kansas versus North Carolina, two blue as the bloods playing. Like, respect to both programs for doing it. Outscored Kansas by 12 in the second half. That's on the road to open up the season. That's a huge takeaway. So,
yeah, I mean, other than not getting the win, like, to be able to come back from being down 20, like, that takes a lot in that environment. Like, that is a huge moral victory, and I think it'll pay off down the road because, like we mentioned, it's not going to be many more tougher venues than that. All right, guys, this is great. Good stuff by Spencer. He's going to be able to talk about this game and this team better than any of us in terms of an X&O standpoint. Appreciate Mike hopping on. And Connor, guys, remember to rate, review, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And we're looking for sponsors now. I'm actively pursuing sponsors so we can try to bring in some money and keep this going and do some cool stuff. Mike, you come to the Wake Forest game on Saturday? Next Saturday?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'm going to see what my schedule looks like November, December. I am going to be at the Florida game in Charlotte. I know that much. I have my tickets. So
I'm going to be in the Dean Dome for the American game on Friday and staying through the weekend, doing a big weekend in Chapel Hill. So I'll be at the Wake Forest night game too. All right, guys, good to see you all. And we will talk to you next time. Appreciate it.